This is the first time that a video like this has really kind of, I mean, it depresses me. I mean, it makes me feel bad. Hey guys, it's your average middle-aged American back again with another reaction video. This one takes us back to Spain. This video title caught my eye. I hope it's not clickbait. I kind of actually do hope it's a little bit of clickbait because the title is Why Living in Spain Has Become Unbearable. Now, I know that there's been a little bit of a housing issue and a tourist issue and that kind of thing going on in Spain. But Spain is one of my favorite places to do videos about and to learn about and hopefully to visit soon. If you're new to my channel, it's anything and everything that interests me as an average middle-aged American, but most of it is focused on learning about other countries and other cultures around the world. Wife and I plan to do some traveling when we go into retirement, so we are trying to find out as much as we can about Europe and the rest of the world so that we can make intelligent traveling decisions. Make sense? All right, we've got about 1,750 subscribers so far. Channel's about a year and a half old. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I think you'll like it. And check out my other videos. And enough jibber jabber. Let's check out this video and cross our fingers.
What happened to Spain?
Just a few years ago, Spain was the dream of many Europeans, but today, life in this country is becoming increasingly unbearable. In 2014, a square meter of housing in Madrid cost less than 3,000 euros. Today, it's nearly 5,000 euros.
Let's see what a euro is. I think it's pretty close to a dollar these days, isn't it? Oh, 1.16 dollars. For a while, I think it was like 105 or something. So it looks like America's losing a little ground, eh? All right, so in my world, an apartment, 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment would be maybe, let's call it 1,000 square feet. That'd be 93 square meters. There is no way that's right. Oh, that's apartment sales prices. Okay. So that's $324,000. Yikes. Holy moly, that's expensive. That's expensive to start with. That's in Madrid, though. Now it's... All right, so 1,000 square foot, which is what we use in America, square feet, because we are imperial and refuse to change because America. So 93 square meters is about 540,000 US. The problem is the income difference. That's the problem. 540,000 US is more expensive than our average home and much smaller. I think the average home in America is about $425,000 nowadays, and it's like at least twice that size. The problem is the income difference. Holy moly. Yeah, you guys have a serious housing crisis. Guys, you're gonna have to help me on this and comment on this and tell me what's right and tell me what's wrong, because this is just downright scary. According to my math, even at 3,000 euros per square meter, it would be very difficult to live in Madrid on any average or even above average income until you get into dramatically above average, above median. According to the old interweb, the median household income in Spain is $32,000, 32,000 euros a year. 32,000 euros a year is 2,667 euros a month. So let's round up, 2,700 euros. Well, a 93 square meter home, which is not big. It's not tiny. I mean, it's 1,000 square feet in America, which is not big at all, is 465,000 euros. And 465,000 euros on a mortgage for 30 years, not including any taxes, not including any insurance, any upkeep, or anything else, just the mortgage. I put it at 5%, which is lower than America. So I don't know what your interest rate is, but is $2,500 a month. Our mortgages, the banks ideally want you to be at a third of your income. Well, if you're making $2,700 a month and your mortgage is $2,500 a month, you're not going to get approved. Your $2,500 mortgage in America, you need to make at least $7,500 a month. God, I've done a lot of videos on Spain, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And I've always said, you know, for tourists, it's too cheap. It's just too cheap because of the difference of economy. In America, you can have $1 million house and not be considered rich. So if you're 65 years old and you've had that home for 25 or 30 years and you sell it and you have $1 million in cash, you could go to Spain and live like a king, because of the difference, the economy. This is the first time that a video like this has really it depresses me. I mean, it makes me feel bad. I'm only hoping that Madrid is just an outlier, just like New York City or something. Okay, your interest rates are lower, which is good. You're at about 4%, but it's not going to make that much of a difference. Your mortgage is $2,200 a month. So you got to make like minimum of maybe 5,000 euros a month, which is what, 60,000 a year, which is almost double median household income. Median household income, not median income per person. I mean, you guys, I don't have all the answers. I don't have any of the answers. My suggestions would be double your minimum wage and double every hotel room in Spain, price-wise. I mean, you have to have a passport, check in and stuff. Just, if they're from another part of Europe, charge them 50% more. If they're from out of Europe, double it. I guess. I don't know, because this ain't working.
Nearly 5,000 euros. We're talking about a classic housing and cost of living crisis. But that's not the whole story. There's also another crisis, a pretty unique one, a tourism crisis. It's not just about a few extra hotels. Locals say they're overloaded and tourism is literally destroying their cities. In 2024, Spain was visited by 94 million people, including nearly 15 million in Barcelona alone. By the way, that's almost 10 times the city's population. Because of this, in the summer of 2025, thousands of Spaniards took to the streets, not to
Okay, this is a simple solution. You guys have... This is like someone who owns their own business on a bigger scale. If your expenses are dramatic and your income is low and the demand is there, increase your prices. Just double everything. Double every airplane tax, double every cruise ship tax, double every hotel tax, double every Airbnb tax, increase penalties for people doing Airbnb without, paying taxes. Double is the answer. If it's cost $1,000, well, the taxes aren't $1,000. So let's say it's $100 tax on an airplane per passenger to fly into Spain. Double it. I mean, you got 94 million people coming in. Whatever they pay in taxes, if you just doubled it, it couldn't hurt. I will pay it. I'm not rich. I'm not close to rich. I'm not even well off. But when we go to Spain, you budget for these things. And if I don't want to go to a country that's suffering, who resents tourism, let tourism help your economy instead of hurt it. And you know what? Maybe you get the best of both worlds. Maybe half as many people come and spend twice as much. I mean, that would be great, or at least better, right? I read somewhere, I've been doing these videos long enough to know Spain is second or third in the world for tourism. I mean, I believe it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's above the United States, and we're quite a bit bigger. You just got to tax it, man. Tax. And listen, I don't like taxes in my country on me, but I certainly understand that it's not sustainable.
Protest against their government or any laws at all, but against mass tourism.
Any place in the planet don't want this kind of tourists, this predator, okay, tourists, because destroy. They say, oh, we will do a big hotel and all the people here have work in the future. Washing dish. This is not good for the population. This is not good for the islands.
To understand today's crisis, we have to go back a few decades, to the time when Spain was ruled by General Franco. In the 1950s, Spain was still largely an agricultural country. Poverty was widespread in the countryside. A lot of people dreamed of moving to the big cities, where jobs and wages were better, but Franco himself simply didn't want that. He feared that large concentrations of people in urban centers could become breeding grounds for political unrest. So he introduced a permit system for relocation. In practice, hundreds of thousands of people were trapped in rural poverty with barely any prospects. By the 1960s, however, the regime had to ease its grip. Social pressure and the need for industrial labor were simply overwhelming. That was when the permit system was abolished, and what followed was the largest internal migration in Spain's history. Nearly 10 million people changed their place of residence. Out of a total population of just 32 million, that meant 1 in 3 Spaniards decided to move. To handle this influx, Franco ordered the mass construction of cheap housing in metropolitan areas. Those were basic and cramped, but at least affordable. As a result, the share of homeowners in the country rose from 45% in 1950 to 70% in 1970. In Barcelona, it was even more impactful. Only 5% of families owned their homes in 1950, but by 1970, that number had reached 38%. From that moment on, housing stopped being seen as a service in the traditional sense. It came to be viewed as a capital investment. Banks supported this model with mortgages, and politicians encouraged home ownership as the foundation of social stability. This mentality, inherited from the Franco era, would go on to shape the housing market for decades. The 1980s were a time of major transformation for Spain. Industry declined and factories shut down, which led to record unemployment levels, reaching as high as 20%. The country, striving to catch up with the West, needed a new economic anchor. Then came 1992. Barcelona hosted the Summer Olympics, which marked a turning point for the city and the nation alike. The Olympic Games opened the door to a complete urban overhaul and became Spain's biggest image investment in decades. Transport networks were redesigned, old neighborhoods were renewed, and industrial zones turned into leisure districts. The city was rebuilt, not to serve its residents, but to accommodate foreign visitors instead. That was the moment Spain realized its future no longer lay in factories, but in beaches and hotels. Not long after, tourism began to grow at a pace the country had never experienced before. But that success came with a dark side, because when your entire economy depends on tourism, you become a hostage to the vacation season. Nevertheless, as long as the system held up, no one worried. At the start of the 21st century, Spain went through a construction frenzy. In 2006 alone, over 700,000 new homes were built in a single year. That's more than in Germany, France, and Italy combined. At first glance, you might think it was an economic miracle. Spain, indeed, was growing faster than most of Europe. The construction sector made up over 12% of GDP and accounted for a quarter of all new jobs. But in reality, it was a debt-fueled bubble built on speculation. Small towns often ended up with thousands of new housing units built with no clear purpose, while Madrid and Barcelona still lacked affordable rentals. And then in 2008, the bubble burst. Banks collapsed, and hundreds of thousands of people lost their jobs. Unemployment jumped from 8% to a record 26% by 2013, which basically means 1 in 4 working-age Spaniards had no job. On top of
That's insane. Let me know down in the comments if this affected you. Were you one of the unemployed? Somebody in your family, your parents? 1 in 4. Now, I'm assuming that because of the way your government is structured, that you guys have a pretty good safety net for unemployment. Here, we really don't. We do have unemployment, but it varies on each state. Some states you get next to nothing, and some states you get, it depends on what your income is to start with. If you make a lot, you probably won't get a lot. So it's a sliding scale. It's really designed for the lowest paid to start with. So if somebody, makes a below average, below median wage, then they may get 50% or 60 or 70, percent of their original wages for a while. Of course, we have other programs, for the poor and that type of thing. For food and rent assistance and stuff like that, but just unemployment. But if you're making a good wage and you lose your job, it's a shell shock. I mean, you may get 10% or 20% or maybe 30% of what you were making. So, yeah, if 25% of the country was unemployed, it would be absolutely devastating. Our unemployment usually bounces around, depending on how you look at the stats, anywhere from 3 to 6%, something like that. 26% that's brutal.
over 1.5 million homes were left empty and unsold, with some housing complexes turning into ghost towns. Thousands of families were forced to default on their mortgages, and banks seized their homes. That's how the so-called mortgage generation was born, young adults paying off homes whose market value had dropped by half. It was the worst social crisis since the dictatorship, and at the same time, a turning point, because the country that had been developing housing units at full speed now had to look for a new lifeline. And that lifeline turned out to be tourism. In 2013, the government changed short-term rental.
Look at that. I mean, just look at that. So beautiful. Wow.
Regulations. It was a green.
Look at those gardens. That little, I don't know what you even call it. Gardens, I guess. I don't know. Little maze. You know, it's all symmetrical. If you're new to my channel, I'm into symmetry. Symmetry's my thing, and those gardens are symmetrical. So cool. Except for the trees being on one end.
light for platforms like Airbnb. Within just a few years, entire neighborhoods of Barcelona and Madrid began to transform. Buildings that once housed families became vacation apartments. As a result, by 2019, Barcelona alone had more than 18,000 active Airbnb listings. That was more than the city's entire stock of public housing. At the same time, house prices started to rise rapidly. When an owner can rent an apartment to a family for €900 a month or earn the same amount from tourists in just a few nights, the choice is obvious. And here's an interesting paradox. Spain today has around 3.8 million vacant homes, about 14% of its entire housing stock. Even in overcrowded Barcelona, nearly 9% of dwellings are empty. That's the irony of the Spanish crisis. People from all over the world buy homes here, but visit them only for short vacations. That's one of the main reasons why the walls of Barcelona are increasingly covered with anti-tourism graffiti.
Tengan un turismo sostenible que permita también vivir la gente que pueda vivir del turismo, pero que permita un turismo sostenible que no impida que los vecinos hagan su vida normal en los barrios.
And when you look closer at Spanish society,
You know, I'm sorry about your housing crisis, and I'm sorry that your leaders are not solving the problems the way they should. Help me understand. You know, down in the comment section, we keep it respectful. I'll let anybody say anything they want until it gets into name calling and all that, and I'll just delete your comments. And if it gets too bad, I'll just ban you. But as far as opinions go, we have great conversations down in the comments section, so maybe you can help me and others. If you are one of these people that are shouting "tourists go home," tourists go home, I just watched someone explain with a graph on how your industry turned from manufacturing and industrialization to tourism. These are decisions your government made. These are decisions that your country made. And now your tourism, if that goes away, what's the answer for income? What's the answer for jobs? You have 90 million people come into your country. Well, what happens if that goes down to 9 million? Are you telling me that's not going to affect unemployment? I'm all about taxing the hell out of them. Let's get as much money from each person as we can. There's no reason that a tourist should be able to live dramatically better in Spain that while they're there than a normal hardworking person. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with hotel rooms being expensive. I mean, not for me. I don't want it. I mean, obviously, I'd rather save money. But if that's what makes sense, that's what makes sense. But just telling people to go home and don't visit my country, how does that help you? So help me understand it. I'm seriously, help me understand it. I'm not trying to argue about it. I'm confused. If it's a, you know, last time I checked, it was somewhere between 10 and 20% of your country's GDP was tourism. So if you doubled all the taxation on that, and let's say it cut the population, cut the visitors by 25% and raised the income by 50%, how is that not a good thing? But just telling people to go home and spitting in their beers, I mean, come on, you're better than that. I know you're better than that. I've talked with so many of you. I know that. And I know that it's not the most common feeling. Not everyone hates everyone outside of Spain. So, let me know.
things get even worse. Spain now faces one of the most severe generational crises in Europe. Over the past few decades, average wages have barely risen at all. That sounds bad enough, but it looks even grimmer when you compare it to housing prices, which have skyrocketed over the same period. In Madrid or Barcelona, renting a small apartment now consumes more than half of an average salary.
All right, so I just did that calculation, and yeah, so I wasn't wrong, unfortunately. So it's more than half. It's not, I mean, it's not even half. It's more than half. It's dramatically more than half, unless you just have a tiny, tiny little place. 50 square meter apartment. That's $240,000. So yeah, that's like 1,500. Well, forget about buying. That's just renting. You know, you're going to pay 1,500 euros a month to 2,000 euros a month. And you're only making 25, 26, 27, 28. I mean, it's like 2/3 of the median household income for a 50 square meter apartment, which is like what, 600 square feet or something. I think that's about a third or a fourth. No, I think it's about a fourth. Now let's call it a third of the size in America. And I know things are different, but so yeah, that's pretty compact. Hopefully that's just in the big city. I hope. And I hope the income is more in the big city.
Enough for a family, nor for the future. In Germany or Austria, rent takes up around 30% of income. In Spain, it's often as much as 50%. More and more.
It's more than 50%. I've done the math. I mean, I don't know what we're talking about here. I mean, if you're a married couple and you have 2 kids, you're going to have at least a 2-bedroom, right? Maybe a 3-bedroom. That's going to be 70, 80, 90 square meters minimum. That's $2,500 a month. Minimum. So I don't know what we're talking about here. If you have double the median household income, let's call it $5,000 a month, and you're paying at least $2,500 a month minimum. So it's a minimum of half. If you've got a couple of kids, I mean, you can't have 2 or 3 kids in a 30 square meter apartment. Wow.
Or young Spaniards, especially those living in major cities, simply never move out. 65% of young Spaniards still live with their parents. That's one of the highest rates in the entire European Union. That directly leads to collapsing birth rates. Spain now has one of the lowest fertility rates in Europe, only around 1.2 children per woman. This means the population is shrinking and aging at record speed. It's much more common in big cities, but rural areas are also showing signs of this crisis. It's possible for a village to simply empty out because entire regions lose their inhabitants. In some provinces, like Castile and Leon, over 70% of municipalities now have fewer than 1,000 residents. Those with ambition and energy leave for major cities or move abroad altogether, to Germany or France, for example. In Spain today, the housing crisis collides with the demographic one, and in the long run, it spells even greater trouble for Spaniards.
Lamento tener que comparecer en estas circunstancias, pero nadie, y digo nadie, que tenga un mínimo de aprecio a nuestro país, puede ignorar el estado de putrefacción al que nos tiene sometido el actual gobierno. La degradación es total. Ha llegado el momento de que la mayoría de los españoles decentes entendamos y reaccionemos ante lo que está en juego.
For years, the authorities pretended the problem would solve itself. Eventually, public pressure grew so great that the state had to act. In 2023, Spain passed the Ley de Vivienda, the new housing law. It introduced new regulations for rents in so-called stressed areas, imposed rent caps, and created a tax on empty properties to push owners to rent out unused apartments while they're not living there. In theory, these rules make a lot of sense for locals. However, in practice,
No, they don't. And I'll tell you why. You can't control your people. Your free market has to be allowed. By making people do things they don't want to do, they'll just divest, and then you'll be in a worse situation. If a landlord can't make any money, he can't supply money to the economy. If a landlord can't make any money, he can't pay taxes on that money. That's not the answer. The answer is to increase taxes for tourism. Focus on what your strength is, and your strength is tourism. You know, maybe maybe your tourism is so high because it's so cheap to go to Spain. You know, for 2 years, I've thought about how great it is for someone to move to Spain if they have the income, especially like a remote job. You know, if you work remotely in a white collar position, you know, where you can live anywhere in the world as long as you have a good internet connection. I mean, you can move to Spain if you're making, let's say, double the income of the median person in America, and you're living in Spain where the cost of living is less, or, well, I shouldn't say the cost of living is less as much as the median income in Spain is like less than half of what it is in America. So if you're making double what you make in America and you're living in Spain, you're making like 4 times or 5 times what the, you know, the median income is in Spain remotely, then you got it made. I mean, you got it made in the shade. Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe the fact that everything is so out of balance with the rest of these other countries. You know, Switzerland's much more expensive. America's more expensive, or at least, you know, the income is more expensive. But yeah, it used to be more expensive for sure. You know, Canada, all these countries where you make more money, if you can make more money and live where it's less expensive, then that's what you're going to do, or at least vacation there. It's all about taxes to me. It's not about forcing people to rent out things that they own. It's theirs. They can do what they want with it. They should be able to do what they want with it. Just like this whole idea that you have to have a permit to move. I mean, I don't want to get controversial, but this is the whole reason America's Constitution is America's Constitution. And that's the reason that we fight so hard to protect it, is so that things like that will never happen here. And I mean, obviously, you've got a lot of changes over the last 60 years. And now we're in another problem. You know, you had a problem, you sort of fixed it. You had another problem, you sort of fixed it. Now you have another problem. I mean, instead of abandoning tourism altogether and trying to figure out something else, how about just fixing it so that it benefits Spaniards? Double the minimum wage, you know, create a tourist-friendly environment that's expensive, and take that money and feed it back into your residents, your nationalists, your citizens. It just seems so simple. I know that, you know, the numbers are, you know, are numbers, but the idea to me is simple. Make tourists pay more to go there.
Implementation has been slow and buried under bureaucracy. On top of that, landlords keep finding loopholes and prices continue to rise despite new laws. The main problem is that some regulations are having the opposite of their intended effect. Owners aware of new rent regulations often prefer to sell their apartments or list them on Airbnb.
Exactly what I said. So you're going to start, you know, you're going to do rent control and all this stuff. Nope, I'm out. Here. So I'll sell it, let someone else deal with it. That ain't going to, how's that help you? That doesn't help you. Rent control is a disaster. A disaster. Look at New York City. Look at anywhere in America has rent control. It's a disaster. These are the apartments that get fixed the slowest. They never get updated. They never get repaired because the landlord's losing money. So what's the incentive? I mean, they're just waiting around for people to die so that they can rent it out for market value. That's not the answer. That's not the answer. The answer is the other way. Let fair market determine the price and then do some kind of a government subsidy. for rent adjustment. Let the government pay part of the rent or whatever. Don't penalize the landlord. Don't penalize the investors. Penalize the tourist. Just study New York City. You'll see anything you need to see as far as rent control and what a disaster it is. I mean, if you want to be a complete socialist, government-controlled country where you don't have any rights to investment or any kind of capital free market or whatever, then that's something you guys got to vote on. But it ain't going to fix your economy, I can tell you that.
For legal listings actually rose faster once the law was repealed. Spain now risks repeating that scenario. Barcelona decided to go even further. In 2024, the city announced the mass elimination of tourist apartments by 2028. And here's the key question. Does the state truly control the housing market or merely make rules without proper planning, which only deepens the crisis? On top of soaring prices, there's another often overlooked problem. Spain has some of the strictest tenant protection laws in Europe. That might sound good, but it's often abused to its limits by dishonest tenants. In such cases, evictions can drag on for months, even years. And it's not a new issue. Already in the 1990s, such cases were common and could take over a year to resolve. And after the 2008 crisis, the problem became even more severe.
See, we have the same problem. The difference is that our states make up their own laws. If you're not really familiar with America and American law, we have 50 states. Well, they're not really little, but we have 50 states. And it's literally like 50 countries. Every state has its own governor, their own laws, everything. The United States itself is basically a federal government that kind of protects us from the rest of the world, does international trading and all that. And that's the military and that kind of thing. But all the states are run independently. It's their 10th Amendment of the Constitution, and it's extremely important. Most of the power in America is through the state government, and that's why people decided to live in a certain area. If you compare Texas and California, they're completely different. New York and Oklahoma, completely different. Washington State and Georgia, completely different. And so people vote on what they want in that state. California has got a serious problem with squatters and tenants, and, the whole place is just going to hell in a handbasket. It's got one of the largest economies in the entire world. If California was a country, it would have like the 12th largest economy in the world or something crazy. But the state's going to hell in a handbasket. Whereas if you go to somewhere else, like down in Florida, they don't play that. They'll pull you out and throw you in the street. Now, granted, you have to go through a system. I mean, it may take 90 days, or 3 or 4 or 5 months, but it won't drag on for years. And squatters that doesn't happen. They don't do that down there. Whereas in California, you just move in, someone's on vacation, you move into their house and they're there for like a year. And then if you break into your own house, you go to jail. I mean, it's crazy. It's nonsense. But that's why each state has their own rules, because everyone's got their own political agenda, their own different beliefs on how people should live. Like taxes, there's income tax federally, and then each state has their own income tax laws. Some states don't have any taxes. Down in Florida doesn't have any income tax. California's got an extremely high income tax. So maybe you guys need to kind of do that in regions or something where you decide some of those laws, if that's what you want. But again, if you're handcuffing the investors, if you're handcuffing the landlords, you're not going to get what you want, because it's not worth it. They can go invest in the American stock market, or they can go invest in international, trade or whatever. They can go invest in something else. Bitcoin, anything that's less headaches, less laws, less problems than being handcuffed by the government, not being able to control their own property. It's crazy.
Thousands of families stopped paying mortgages or rent, and the anti-desahucio movement blocked bailiffs. Every government since has promised reform, but the system barely changed. In 2023, there were over 38,000 eviction cases nationwide. In Barcelona and Madrid, some families occupied homes for up to 2 years without paying rent, while the owner still had to cover mortgages and bills. Then there's the phenomenon of ocupas, illegal squatters living in properties while they are empty. According to court data, police recorded more than 16,000 such cases in 2022 alone, most of them in Catalonia, long considered Europe's squatter capital. All of this drives many landlords to abandon long-term rentals altogether. They find it easier and overall more profitable to list their flats on Airbnb. They get paid up front and avoid the risk of a tenant they can't evict for months. The result is that the rental market shrinks even further and the housing crisis deepens.
Let's talk about Spain. The economy has been growing faster than most of its neighbours recently, and that's in great part due to its tourism industry, which contributes around 13% of GDP growth and once again is breaking records. But not everyone is happy about the growth of tourism in Spain, which is now seeing a backlash in many parts of the country.
But beyond problematic tenants and soaring rents, there's a deeper issue. For years, Spain has built its economy on tourism and real estate, which has turned homes from places to live and raised families into financial assets for international investors. Foreign funds now buy up entire blocks of properties. Large corporations treat Spanish apartment buildings like stock portfolios.
Tax them. It's very simple. Tax them. You know, in America, the richest people pay the most in taxes. We have property taxes. You guys don't really have that much to do with property taxes. Have property taxes where if you don't live there, you know, call it 66% of the year, 2/3 of the year if you don't live there, or 51% of the year, whatever it is, then you pay a property tax every year. You know, I know people that have expensive homes that pay $50, $60, $80, $100,000 a year just in property taxes because they're rich and they have giant homes and they, you know, that's just part, they know it's just part of when they go to buy a home, they know that they're going to have a certain amount they're going to have to pay in property taxes. You know, when you have a mansion and you're rich, the upkeep, you know, and the property taxes and the insurance, you could spend $15,000, $20,000 a month, not even including a mortgage, just on insurance and upkeep and property taxes and whatever. That's what you need to do. It's being too cheap for people to come in and buy up everything. And then it goes on forever. So you pay property taxes forever. It's like maintaining your city. That's what we use it for. Here, every person pays property taxes, whether it's $1 or $1 million a year, they're paying something. And that's for the schools, the roads, you know, all that. It's very simple. You can always discount it if you live there. Where I live, you get a discount if you live in the home. So you don't pay as much property taxes if it was at your second home or third home. If you live in it, you pay less. I mean, if you guys don't pay anything in property taxes, or, you know, say you pay 1% of the value a year or whatever, you can always do a credit, you know, for if you live in it, to make it, doesn't have to be a dime more than it is now. But then if you don't live in it, it's going to cost money. And that money goes straight to doubling the minimum wage and more infrastructure and all that stuff.
Things they buy low and sell for profit later on. That means ordinary Spaniards aren't competing with other locals anymore. They're up against the global capital. And unfortunately, the problem doesn't stop with housing. Foreign firms are also taking over key sectors like energy, insurance, or banking. Decisions about prices and investments are increasingly made in London, Frankfurt, or New York, not in Madrid or Barcelona. As a result, Spain is losing not only control over its housing market, but also its ability to shape its own economy in the years ahead. And that's the greatest danger of all, because if a nation no longer decides its own future, who will? Even the government admits the situation is dire. In 2025, it proposed a 100% tax on property purchases by non-EU residents who don't live in Spain. That's another measure meant to discourage foreign investments that drive up prices. But as of this day, the law remains only a proposal, raising serious questions about its legality and effectiveness. Yet still, the fact that politicians are considering such drastic steps.
You know, you're missing the boat on that. You don't pay a property tax. You don't pay the tax when you buy it. You pay it annually. I mean, you could have an impact tax. We have that sometimes. You know, where if you have if you go to register a new car or something, if you're from out of state or that kind of thing, you have an impact tax. So maybe do 10% of the home's value as an impact tax. And then you do like, you know, 1 or 2 or 3% of the home's value every year from that point on. And as the home increases, so does the tax. Then if they go to sell it, the next person, if they're not living in it, they're going to have to pay that 1 or 2 or 3% a year. If you want to get dramatic, make it 5%. You know, something like that. Instead of doing it all one lump sum, no one's going to do that. All that does is drive the value down because people don't care how much the house costs. They just care how much they're going to pay for it. So whether they're going to pay the government or pay the person buying it, it's just going to drive the market down.
Shows just how deep the crisis has become. Because today, Spain has become a living paradox. It's a stunning paradise with amazing weather, but it's increasingly being shaped for tourists. Spaniards themselves see their own country more and more as a daily struggle, torn apart by foreign investment and mass tourism. A very similar scenario is now unfolding in Greece.
Well, there you go, guys. I mean, it's a good video. It's depressing, but it is a good video. Somehow I turned like a 15-minute video into like an hour and a half, so I'm going to have to do a lot of editing. But just tax people. It's supply and demand. It's just basic economics. If you have too many tourists and you don't have enough money, tax the tourists more. It'll cut down the number of tourists and raise the income. If you people can't afford to live, you know, in decent housing, increase the minimum wage with those extra taxes. If you're having a housing crisis, tax housing for people that don't live in their homes. Make it harder to move to Spain. Make them jump through more hoops that, you know, for long-term residents, not vacation homes. The super rich are going to still buy. They don't care about the taxes. You know, I've got clients that have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 houses across the world. They don't care about taxes. It is what it is. But that's not the problem. The problem is that it's affecting the middle class. It's not going to affect the rich, but it can certainly bring in a lot more income to give to the people not making a lot. All right, that's what I got for you today, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Thanks for checking out my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see other videos similar to this one on the same country, click here. If you'd like to see some videos on some other countries in Europe, click there. Want to see some of the most beautiful castles and cathedrals in the world? They're over here. Want to check out the United States? We're down here. I appreciate you, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.